Welcome to Seniority Authority, the podcast where I track down experts to answer your questions on aging. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. Let's get smarter about growing older. If you were to ask the average 70 or 80-year-old how they would like to grow older, the vast majority of them would choose to stay at home. And this is also confirmed by a recent AARP study. Yet what most people don't understand is that as we age, most of us will need some kind of help with what are called the activities of daily living. The solution? For most people, it's hiring home care assistants. But how do you know what to look for? What can home care assistants do, and what are their limitations? Welcome to Seniority Authority. I'm your host, Kathleen Toomey. My guest today is very talented serial entrepreneur Stephen Limpe, a graduate of the University of Chicago Business School, as well as the Wharton School. He's had a successful track record in fields as far diverse as energy, engineering, and venture capital. But recently, he's spent over a decade building a leading concierge home care agency called CompassCare, as well as an informative breakthrough website dedicating to helping to crack the issues around aging and home care, and that is called Ask WiseBird. He is president and CEO of CompassCare, as well as co-founder and CEO of WiseBird, which is a newly developed multimedia website and app providing free information, tools, and resources on caregiving. Stephen, we are so excited to have you on Seniority Authority today.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you are a true leader. Stephen and I have known each other for quite a while, and I am thrilled that you have made the time to come on and share some of your knowledge with our listeners.
Well, I'm a big fan of Seniority Authority, and it's a pleasure to sit on this side of the microphone, I guess.
Good. That's awesome. Now, some people who are looking at your background would say, what is a tech entrepreneur doing in the senior living space? How did you come to try to focus on this or begin to focus on this industry?
Well, Kathleen, I focused my career really on service businesses. Some of them were technology driven, some of them were in more basic industries, but they all revolved around human capital and delivering a high quality service. My own healthcare journey began after my last project, and I was taken ill. I went through some very serious illnesses with a brain tumor and with prostate cancer. So I had 3 years or so where I went through a craniotomy.
Oh my gosh.
Prostatectomy. I went through hormone and radiation treatment for my prostate cancer, and I got a full front view seat of our healthcare system. This was all done in New York, where I was living at the time. And I was at a wonderful hospital, New York Presbyterian, Weill Cornell. I had all that work done there. What I saw through that journey, Kathleen, was that the science and technology of medicine has become positively fantastic voyage. Surgeries being done robotically, everything being done orthoscopically, minimally invasive surgeries, even for highly complex surgeries. What I also found was that the post-acute care, the post-surgical care was lacking and not quite up to par with the science and the technology of modern medicine. What I mean by that is I think recuperation and recovery and post-acute care is very difficult. I think that the hospital care is quite excellent, but the transition home becomes quite complex and difficult. And that is where my journey into home care began, because I saw how arduous that transition was. My wife and I had a hard time dealing with my medications for my brain surgery and for my prostate cancer. I needed assistance, so it was a huge burden on my family members. And I, again, got a front row seat of what it's like to have to be cared for and to have people care for you. So that led me to want to focus on home care. Home care is a place where you can be hugely impactful on the quality of life of older adults. Why was I interested in older adults? Because I was exactly within that cohort. I had parents who were in their 80s and 90s, and I worried about them. Any of my friends were worried about how they were going to age and where they were going to age. And this was all very near and dear to my heart.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Stephen. I had no idea you had gone through such a traumatic experience, and how fortunate we are that many people go through a surgery and don't think twice. You went through two very challenging experiences and decided to put your expertise in the path of how to fix things. So that really makes it so much more meaningful and really gives everyone a kind of a sense of purpose as to why you're doing this, because you experienced it firsthand.
That's right, Kathleen. Like many things in life, we find that things look dire and we wonder, why is this happening to me? But if we're resilient enough, we can find the good in it. And I found a wonderful journey post my medical conditions simply because of something quite awful happening to me.
Well, I am very grateful that you are looking and feeling great and you have kind of a renewed lease on life, and you're focusing on a way to help so many more people who are going to need this. And I think it's true. People don't think they need it until they get into a situation like you were, and then they realize how significant it is to get good care at home. And you're right. The hospitals, the physicians, they're up to speed and high tech, but it's when you come home that the recovery can kind of make or break you.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of people have misconceptions about hiring home care workers. I know my brothers talked about when we needed a home care person for my dad. Well, let's just get a nurse to come in whenever we want on call. And that's just not something that you can really do. So, tell us a little bit about what can home caregivers do and what can they not do?
Well, that's an enormous question, and we can spend the entirety of the podcast on this, but let me try and be as succinct as possible. Generally speaking, there are no federally mandated rules, okay? So everything is pretty much at the state level. If people want to age in place, and as you mentioned, the 2025 AARP study is showing that almost 77% of Americans want to age at home. All right, so that's where people want to be.
And I think that's low,
Yeah,
personally.
I mean,
I think it's higher than 77%.
anecdotally, my experience may be closer to 90%, but let's go with
Yeah.
their numbers.
Okay.
And that's three quarters or more of the country that's going to want to do that, all right, of our aging population. And as we know, we've heard this many, many times, how many people are aging as the boomers are going through the system. So this is becoming a very relevant conversation that we're having. When people want to age in place, they basically, and as you say, they eventually need some assistance with ADLs, okay, which are the basic physical needs of being bathed or toileted or transported or with eating, etc. If people are going to need that kind of help, they can do it generally one of three ways. They can have a family caregiver, a system, which is how the vast majority of care is actually provided in the United States. Some 60 million Americans are actually identifying as family caregivers, all right? Secondly, families can hire people themselves, which sounds like you and your brother tried to do with your family situation. And then thirdly, you can hire an agency or a company to assist you with those. Okay. Family caregiving is a whole separate conversation. And in fact, you mentioned our new AI powered website and app. And Ask WiseBird is specifically geared towards the family caregiver. But let's focus on the second and the third options: hiring somebody, family hiring someone by themselves, or a company being hired by a family. All right. In the case of a family hiring caregivers themselves, it is frequently underestimated how complex this is. All right. First of all, essentially, you're hiring a household employee. If you pay a caregiver more than $2,700 a year, okay, the IRS deems you to have hired a household employee. That means you are responsible for their wages, their workers' comp, their FICA, okay, everything involved with being an employer. So that's got its own set of complications. The other issue is when you hire somebody directly, you're training them, you're supervising them, you're scheduling them, and if they don't show up because of an illness or a problem, you're trying to figure out how to solve that problem. Thirdly, you've got all the liability associated with managing an employee like that because they're caring for a frail individual. They may be dealing with some kind of quasi-medical tasks. Many people
Hmm.
believe that caregivers managed by a family can engage in medical activities, and actually that's not true. Even under the supervision of a doctor or direct employment by a family, okay, there are limitations on what family caregivers can do. All right. So that's a complex area if one is to try and hire a family caregiver. On the third option, hiring a company, there are basically two distinctions I would want to point out to you. The first is the distinction between home health care and home care. Okay? Many people are using these terms interchangeably, but they actually mean quite a different thing. Okay? Home health care in our industry is commonly referred to as medical or skilled care, personal
Hmm.
care. And home care is referred to as non medical companion care. And the distinction is really important because it deals with the regulation of these companies and the scope of practice that each of these companies is allowed to participate in. So generally speaking, home health care is more transitory, it's more post-acute care. It is covered in part by Medicare after an episode for some limited period of time. It encompasses skilled nursing, it encompasses OT, PT, speech therapy, and the like. On the other hand, home care is a longer term care. All right. This can only be paid for by a family privately, or if they have a long term care insurance, it would probably cover that. All right. And that is a longer term care to help with not only ADLs, but IADLs, instrumental activities of daily living.
That was a phenomenal breakdown. And I'm sure 90% of our listeners did not understand the distinction. For our listeners, can you also describe what IADL is and compared to ADLs?
Sure. IADLs are the more complex tasks that an individual would need for daily living, independent living. Okay. These aren't basic functional physical tasks. These are more complex tasks like transportation, driving yourself around, like shopping, like your basic housekeeping, like your
Hmm.
bill pay. Things like that, that you need, socialization, things that you need to live in a community independently, but they're not as physical a need or as basic a need as an ADL. Generally speaking, ADLs are a more severe form. A need for assistance with ADLs indicates more impairment. And generally speaking, Medicaid will cover some home care, but only in the condition of impairment with ADLs, two or more ADLs, not IADLs.
And I think that's a very important consideration because, from my experience talking to hundreds of people, many people feel that Medicare is going to cover home health care. And in fact, it does not. And as we all live longer with our comorbidities, multiple diagnoses, you do need more help for a longer period of time. The bad news is that's not being covered by Medicare and Medicaid. It has to come out of your private dollars.
That's correct, Kathleen. And we're talking about a fundamental social service that we just as a country just don't provide, okay, as a matter of government subsidies, other than through Medicaid. But you're absolutely right also that most people are under the mistaken impression that Medicare will cover this. That same AARP study showed that 45% of Americans believe that Medicare will cover basic home care in the home on a longer term basis. And unfortunately, that's not true. So people, when they're faced with this situation, get somewhat of a rude awakening. It's best to be aware. And as you say, this has to be handled out of a family's direct finances, or they provide the care themselves. And that's why the vast majority of Americans, or a substantial portion of Americans, are family caregivers. And the vast majority of care in America is provided by a family member. And generally speaking, those family members are unpaid. And there's a whole series of discussions we could have about how eventually people might get certified or trained or compensated. But at the moment, we do not provide any compensation for a family caregiver in any kind of meaningful way.
And I think this is what we need our listeners to hear, is that Medicare is not covering it. So you have to private pay or tap a family member to do that. And that is a very challenging request because there are also a lot of statistics that talk about family caregivers who are being asked to help because there has been no planning ahead. People don't think that they are going to need this. You yourself probably did not think you were going to need this until you had such a traumatic experience. So, my message to our listeners is think ahead and plan how you're going to handle this. Don't assume that XYZ family member is there to jump in and help you 24/7 or 8 hours a day, because that's giving up their career or their family, their other commitments. It's important to plan now. So I would recommend that our listeners start looking into agencies that provide this kind of service. And can you give us some guidelines, Stephen, if people want to start doing this and want to start evaluating an agency? As you said, the government regulations have not caught up to reality of how to evaluate and assign and assess home care workers. How would you recommend someone go about evaluating an organization that provides this service?
Well, if somebody is in need of care and they decide that they want to go to an outside company, then there's a few governing bodies that can provide some assistance with finding home care companies. One is the Home Care Association of America. There's a National Association of Home Care and Hospice Providers. But, in reality, Kathleen, I think the best way to find a home care company or a home health company is through a referral. It's really important to talk to someone who has firsthand experience with the companies, because the quality of service can be so disparate among companies. Generally speaking, home health care is a lot more regulated, more highly regulated than home care. All right. And you're talking about long-term home care, okay? The companion care, the unskilled care where CompassCare resides, my company resides, it's less regulated. So it's important that family members do a lot more due diligence. And I think a part of doing due diligence is to ask some very basic questions, okay? And you want to find out how they provide care. You want to make sure that you understand that the people that they provide are actually their employees, Or are they independent contractors? Or are they a referral source taking a referral fee? You need to understand the relationship that the home care company has with its caregivers, all right? And then once you establish that, you can understand the nature and scope of the service. How are they supervised? If we're talking about home care, okay, the world that I live in, is there any kind of clinical oversight? It's not required, it's not mandated by states, but do they do that as a precaution? Who's managing the operation? How do they pick their caregivers? What kind of background checks do they do on them? What kind of experience do they have? Will the family members be able to interview the caregivers before they're placed? Okay. What happens if there's not a good cultural fit or personality fit between the caregiver and the care recipient? Those are all really important questions to ask. Of course, you're also going to want to understand what the financial arrangement is and are there any obligations? I always believe that it's important to drill down a little more to find out about how this company is managing its caregivers. What are their pay rates? Do they provide them with any benefits? What do they do to care for their own employees? As a manager of service businesses for many years, it may be obvious, but many people overlook the fact that if your service providers are not satisfied and happy, it's very difficult for them to provide good quality service. All right. So you want to start at that basic level.
And that is even more important, Stephen, in the home care industry because we know statistically people that are caregivers tend to take less good care of themselves. Everyone from nurses, CNAs, LNAs on down, that's their last priority. So it's challenging. You really have to be very proactive in terms of caring for your employees when they are caregivers. Tell us a little bit about CompassCare, the organization that you've set up, and how you separate yourself from other agencies in the same field.
Well, thanks for that question, Kathleen. I'd love to tell you about how we're different and why we started the company. Compass Care was founded by a combination of gerontologists, geriatricians, and business people. Okay. And I think that in and of it somewhat unique. Okay. Because we recognize the need to marry all those things, academics and research with some clinical knowledge and expertise on aging, along with basic customer service and customer care. It's not usual to find all three of those things together. So we really focused on trying to marry all three of those things and focus on aging in place. We really believe that most people want to age in place. My parents did. My mom certainly does. And I certainly will want to when I get older. So I think the whole point is we tried to create a company that we would want to use and that we would feel comfortable having our parents use. Okay. We focused first and foremost on the caregivers when we started the company. Just like I was alluding to earlier, if your employees don't have peace of mind, it's very difficult for them to give your clients peace of mind. So we really focused on taking care of our caregivers. So the obvious places to start are with compensation. Historically, this industry has been rife with underpayment. Many companies, because of reimbursement rates or because of competitive price pressures, pay minimum wage or close to minimum wage for basic healthcare workers. We reminded ourselves that these are healthcare workers. Many of our employees are CNAs, certified nursing assistants, or HHAs, home health assistants, and these people have gotten a state certification. They've gone to a vocational school and they have been trained and they are a basic healthcare professional. Our goal was to treat them like a healthcare professional, provide them with a living wage and a path to the middle class. We provide them with basic necessities in terms of benefits. We give them PTO. We give them healthcare and dental benefits. And for their longer term financial health, we do a match on their 401ks. So a lot of
Wow.
you might see in a salaried employee, we've brought down to an hourly employee level. And we've tried to encourage people who are committed to this industry to make a career here. And if you invest in us, we invest in you. So that was a basic tenet of how we started CompassCare and what differentiates us. I think another thing that differentiates us is we really focus on training. Training is so critically
Mm.
important for caregivers because when healthcare professionals feel confident and competent, then they can provide good care. They get stressed out when they're unsure or they're uncertain and they're facing an unknown situation. So we really tried to clarify the job responsibility and to do as much training as we could do. Clarifying the job responsibility meant really helping our people understand that they are there to ensure the well-being of our clients, but also their happiness, okay? And could grasp that we're looking for client satisfaction. We're looking to make people happy in their own homes. We really focused on helping our caregivers understand what they're doing. What we're asking them to do are some basic things, of course,
Mm.
help with ADLs, and we're also asking them to be the eyes and ears of our clients' clinical team. This is the ultimate in remote patient monitoring because our caregivers can see on a day-to-day basis whether there are any changes in the mood, in the speech patterns, okay, in the physical bowel movements, continence issues, or whatever. We encourage our caregivers and we require them to report what they're observing. We then share those observations with the clinical team. And that gets into this idea of a team approach. Compass Care was created not as a home care company simply providing caregivers. We approach our business in a holistic way. We
Mhm.
have a team-centered approach where we're providing a team of caregivers, not a single caregiver. And we're also providing a client service manager who's a household manager who's assisting with a lot of the IADLs and is a single point of contact for our families. And then we have RN oversight as a quality assurance supervisor. So our caregivers feel hugely supported by the
Mhm.
client service manager and by the home office and by our clinical team. So those are just some of the ways, Kathleen, that we're differentiated. We're very focused on IADLs, okay? And we're very focused on the spectrum, the complete spectrum from need for assistance with IADLs to assistance with ADLs to end of life needs. Okay. So that's generally the spectrum. And if we can cover it all, then we can take people all the way through end of life at home.
Well, that sounds wonderful, especially the team approach, because having had healthcare assistance in my home with my dad, I know that we live outside your catchment area in New Hampshire, but our healthcare, home healthcare folks did not have that kind of clinical team support and RN support. And it does provide a lot of stress. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to ask you one quick question about Ask WiseBird because you're covering the waterfront. You've got Compass Care, which is based in the New York City suburban area that provides that concierge care. But you also have this new AI powered website, which I love, which does not talk down to people. It provides a lot of really helpful information and resources for family caregivers. And how did that come about?
Well, Kathleen, one entity that we created that I didn't mention, I'll mention very briefly, is we created a vocational school called CompassCare Institute of Caregiving. It's a Connecticut approved and mandated vocational school for training certified nursing assistants. So we created
Wow.
this as a way to really increase the number of caregivers and to train people the way we thought they ought to be trained. So we took the state mandated basic CNA course and we augmented it with our own proprietary training, which we call Compass Care Works. Compass Care Works was created for us by three Cornell professors, and it focuses more on soft skills than hard skills. This is where the rubber hits the road a lot of times in providing good quality care. The ability to empathically listen, the ability to deal with defiant behavior, ability to read moods, okay?
That's so important in older
Really,
adults.
absolutely. These are really critical skills. So we married them and we have our own program and we have students that come in and want to get trained who are not CompassCare employees or CompassCare hires. So I tell you that because that training that we created then, of course, went to augmenting the training for our own caregivers. But now we're taking that training and we're taking all of the knowledge and experience that we have caring for dozens and dozens of families over the last 10, 11 years. And we're going to take that knowledge and information and we're going to present it to family caregivers. That's where the vast majority of care will be provided in the United States. So it won't be as complex as a CNA course, but it will cover the basics and it will cut to the quick in terms of allowing you to understand what to expect and how to deal with things. And that's the whole idea behind WiseBird. We're using AI to be interactive with the visitors to this site. It hasn't quite officially launched yet, so look for this in the first quarter, but I appreciate your asking about it. We're very excited about it. So it's going to be interactive, it will be AI powered, and it will be multimedia. So we're going to be using evidence-based techniques and we're going to bring them to the general public. There's such a critical need for this kind of education because most people haven't gone through the experience and they are woefully unprepared for what's about to come.
No question. So look for Ask WiseBird. That will be coming in first quarter 2026. Stephen, it has been wonderful to have you on the show. You're doing such great work, and I really appreciate everything you're doing for this whole industry.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. It's been a pleasure to be here.
That's our show for today. If you enjoyed it, please tell your friends and follow us on social media. And until next time, enjoy the chance to get smarter about growing older. That's our show for today. If you liked it, please tell your friends so we can reach more minds and keep the conversation going. Or follow us on social at Seniority Authority. I'm Kathleen Toomey. Until next time, enjoy your chance to get smarter about growing older.